I thought I would go back and rehash some videos that I done when I was still on a cell phone and up and coming as a podcaster. And now that I've got better equipment and stuff, I thought I would rehash an old video, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart. So I thought I'd bring it to y'all today. Uh, it's about three brothers who played at the University of Oklahoma in the 70s. Probably the most evergreen story you'll ever read about Sooner lore and history. It's about the Selmon Brothers, Lucius, Leroy, and Dewey. But before we jump into all of this, thank you for hopping into the channel. I'm your host, Mike the Legend, and if this is something that interests you, can I ask you to please subscribe to the channel and turn on your post notification bells. That way you won't miss any of this content I will be uploading. Could you give me a like and a comment, because it helps push the algorithm of YouTube, and for small content creators such as myself, it means the world. And if you don't mind, please share the video, because sharing is caring. So, the Selmon brothers, Lucius, Leroy, Dewey, they were three brothers from Eufaula, Oklahoma, born to Jesse and Lucius Sr. They were born in Muskogee, but raised in Eufaula, in the small town of Eufaula, Oklahoma, where they excelled in academics and sports. They ran track and played football, and they was a vital part of our early 70-ish foundation for the Sooners on the defensive line. When I'm in discussion with a younger Sooner generation fan, and they ask me, Legend, who is, as far as the defensive line, who are your ultimate favorite players that you ever seen play for OU? And I always, the Selmon brothers. It it wasn't just because of their prowess on the field. It was their off-field academics. They were honor roll students, raised in a good Christian home by Jesse and Lucius Selmon. Lucius Sr., by the way. They were highly recruited coming out of high school, and they turned out to be, probably, in my opinion, three of the best players that ever played defensive line at Oklahoma. And there's been a bunch of good defensive linemen, but having them as a bulk, like the Selmons, nothing will touch them. I'm sorry. Y'all can sit there and bring up Tommy Harris, Gerald McCoy, Dan Cody, Dusty Dvorak, all them guys. They couldn't hold a candle to the Selmon brothers. Sorry. I'll fight you all day long on that one. And for the simple fact, these brothers, to watch them was about like poetry in motion. I mean, they could come off double teams. They was always in the backfield causing hate and discontent. Leroy only got taken off his feet one time, and that was his freshman year in 72. And after that, you never did decleat Leroy. But these three brothers left a mark in Sooner lore and history that will live on forever. They're evergreen. That the Woods brothers from OSU couldn't even hold a candle to the Selmons. And we call the Selmons the crown princes of Oklahoma. Now, if you go to, I'll just start at 73 when we got put on probation. You had Lucius Lear. It was Lucius's senior year, and he got to play with his brothers side by side that year in 73. They went undefeated with one tie. We tied USC that year. Now, because we was on probation. We still had the TV right. We just couldn't go to the bowl game. Now 74, uh, we couldn't go to a bowl game, nor could we be televised on television. So there's really no YouTube video out there other than little clips and snippets of the Selmons. The Selmons were, you just had to be there to see them. And in 74, we went undefeated that year and won the national championship for 74 without going to a bowl game, without uh, being on television. 75, we lost one game to Kansas. And I still think had not been for the Selmon Brothers in that Kansas game, we would have got boat raced bad. So the Selmons and Jimbo Elrod kept it under control. They kept them from scoring 30 on us. I'll just say that. And really, the only time that you got to see the brothers, especially Leroy and Dewey, was in 76 when we played the Orange Bowl for the national championship. And that defense that played in that game was a shell of their former self, because that 73-74 defense was probably one of the best defenses in all OU history. For example, 74 with the Selmon Brothers, Jimbo Elrod and Rod Show, Zach Henderson, Scott Hill, Randy Hughes, those guys. In 74, the average points per game scored on OU was 10.2. Yeah. So the Selmon Brothers, when it comes to defensive line play, that was the foundation of OU football. And after the Selmons left, we floundered along there. Probably the second that I could compare, but it was nothing like the 73 and 74 season with the Selmons. Probably the second best D-line I seen at OU was in 85 with Kevin Murphy at one defensive end, Jeff Tupper, Tony Casillas, Ricky Bryan, and Darrell Reed at the other defensive end spot. That one right there was as close as I had seen to a Selmon Brothers type defensive line. And like I said, we've had the ones and twos come in all the time. I mean, Tommy Harris, Gerald McCoy, Dan Cody, Dusty Dvorak, those guys. Don't get me wrong, I loved watching those guys. But the defensive line, to me, if you want to talk about defensive line, let's talk about that Selmon Brothers defensive line. And you will, if there was videos out there, you would see how the defensive line operated at OU. And make no mistakes about it, without the Selmons, we probably wouldn't have been established that good. But the Selmons, like I said, they come from Eufaula and they grew up on, they was farm boys. I've heard Lucius say many times that when he was in elementary school, his teacher asked him what he wanted for Christmas, and he said a tractor. And she said, "Oh, you want a toy tractor?" He said, "No, I want a real tractor because I'm tired of walking behind these mules plowing." And when their cows would get out, Lucius and Dewey and Leroy would literally pick up the animal and put it back in, and you got to, and boar, not wild hogs, but when their hogs would get out, them boar pigs, they're big. And Lucius, Leroy, and Dewey just pick them up and throw them over the fence back in the pen. That they were what you call country strong. I mean, make no mistake, guys that played at OU that were farm boys, they were They were very, very strong. And the Selmon Brothers were no exceptions. And like I said, you could go to Norman right now, knock on doors, and ask them probably who was the best players you ever seen on defense at OU. 90% of them would say the Selmon Brothers. But they left a lot. Leroy went on to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after the 76 season. They were an expansion team, and Leroy got drafted along with Dewey. Dewey played linebacker and then went to San Diego, which Leroy was our first Sooner to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Lucius, he went to the pros for a little while. He went to New England, but he came back and he was part of Barry Switzer's legendary coaching staff. Dewey still has some to do with the program, but not like Lucius had. We lost Leroy a few years ago to a stroke, and that was just a bad day in Sooner Nation. Shout out to Dewey Selmon. He got inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. So, guys, let me tell you something. When you hear us talk about the Selmon Brothers, that we stand 10 toes down on our Selmons. That they were all of that. I mean, I've heard several times Tom Osborne get from Nebraska, former head coach for Nebraska. I've heard him interviewed many times, and he you can guarantee in that 30-45 minute interview, you can count 5 times he mentions the Selmon Brothers. Darryl Roll, same way at Texas. I mean, they were impressive. And if guys, that is the leg that is the foundation of Oklahoma defense right there, was the Selmons. They left their mark not only on the field but off the field. They were academically smart. They were honor roll students, all Americans, did and said the right things, never did cause any hate and discontent while they was at OU or after OU. You never heard any bad news reports on them. Dewey's son, Zach, is athletic director at Mississippi State. So they and then the Selmon Brothers got their well-deserved statue in the Heisman Park at OU that they deserve. Well, guys, there's this. Y'all have a great day. Leave me a comment down in the comments. This is the legend. We'll see you on the backside. God bless and Boomer Sooner.